Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Bridge Online today. There come so many pivotal moments in our lives when we realize the limits of our strength and the limitless strength of our God. We have to see the battles that we're in that are beyond us, but not beyond Him. So let us celebrate the victory in Jesus today. Victory. When all I see is the mountain, you see the mountain moved. And as I walk through the shadow, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. The battle belongs to you. Sing it, if you are for me. And if you are for me, who can be against me? For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. On all I see are the ashes. You see the beauty. Oh, when all I see is the cross, I just see the empty tomb. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of, sing Almighty, Almighty fortress. You go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Oh, when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. 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 Sing it out. The battle belongs to you. 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 The battle belongs to you, Lord. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, battle belongs to you. God of Abraham, you're the God of covenants, faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven you do just what you said. Though the storm may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn. When you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me, oh. Oh, when seasons change, you remain the same. God, from age to age, both may pass away, your word remains the same. Your history can prove there's nothing you can't do, faithful and true. Oh, the storms may come and the winds will blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn. When you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to from the rising sun, to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Let's put our trust in Him. Put our trust in. Oh, I'll put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. You'll never let me down. I'll put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. You'll never let me down. Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. You'll never let me down. Oh, you'll never let me down. Oh, great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness, O God. Our hope is anchored in you today and forever.
Hey everyone, so glad you're here with us today. If you're joining us for the first time and would like to know more about the Bridge, we would love to connect with you. To start, you can email us at hello@thebridgemarkham.com, or you can also visit thebridgemarkham.com/new and fill out our connection form, and we'll be in touch with you. We also have a gift card just for you. Well, next Sunday is our Abide family gathering. Make sure to register you and your family to attend for 3:15 on the grounds of Springvale Church. Make sure you bring any chairs or picnic blanket or anything that you might like, and even consider bringing an umbrella for worshiping under the sun. This will be a great time together, a worship event for the whole family. We can't wait to see you there. We're getting close to our August baptism dates, with September baptism service coming up soon. So if you're interested in baptism or want to learn more about what baptism is, then head to bridgeconnect.ca and click on the baptism card. This is the best place for you to check out more information and to register. And once you do, I will personally be in touch with you to talk to you about some next steps. Now, whether you've been given throughout the week already, or whether you have direct withdrawal already set up for your offering, this morning we want to give you the opportunity to give prayerfully and purposefully. You can go to the link on your screen to give. You can e-transfer to giving@thebridgemarkham.com, or you can mail a check to the church address. I would like to thank you for your faithful, generous giving.
Good morning. I hope your summer is going well, and I pray that you, your families, and friends are feeling refreshed and blessed during this season. I'm Jay Anandarajan, and I'm here on behalf of the Board Nomination Committee to draw your attention to the board member nomination process. Our next annual business meeting is tentatively scheduled for Sunday, November 21st. Further details will be provided to you at a later date. We would like to start the process to find suitable board members to take on this ministry role for the next 3 years. The Board Nomination Committee requests your prayerful engagement in the matters of our church and to nominate members to the board. Current board members Kevin Aid is completing a 6-year term, thus will not be eligible for re-election. Bill Buck is completing his first 3-year term and is eligible for re-election. Thus, there are 2 positions that need to be filled. We would like to thank Kevin Aid and Bill Buck for serving in the board so diligently. The nomination committee for the board is comprised of Pastor Brian Childs, Sonia Tan, Winston Stewart, Joanne Williams, Jason Lamb, and myself. The timeline for the nomination process is as follows. Today, August 15th, the board nomination opens via our Bridge website. September 5th, our board nomination closes. Between September 5th and October 3rd, the nomination committee will review and contact those who are eligible to consider becoming a board member. October 4th, a final list of qualified names would be prepared to present to you, the membership. Between October 10th and November 21st, we will present the qualified names to the membership. And on Sunday, November 21st, the annual business meeting will take place, and you will have an opportunity to elect and affirm the new members of the board. The role of the board member is to partner with the lead pastor in the overall direction, governance, and administration of the Bridge, so as to guide the pastors and congregation towards God-honoring best practices and purposeful ends. Please visit the board nomination webpage for more information. Now to the qualifications for board members for you to nominate. A member of the church in good standing for at least 2 years. A nominee should be consistently participating in a life group, serving opportunity, and attend a weekend service. They must support the operation of the church and its ministries through tithing. And the leadership qualities of the Bridge that we are looking for is calling, character, competency, chemistry, a capacity to serve, and convictions. How you can nominate. During the next 3 weeks, you may submit your nominations online via our church website. The link is provided here for your reference, and you can find it on our website as well. Based on the qualifications and your prayerful consideration, please consider nominating members to the board. We would like to thank you all for your engagement and commitment to serving God. Thank you and have a blessed week.
You and I have been given this God-given ability to dream, to envision, to see into the preferred future. This ability comes to you from God. It's what makes you different from the animals. Animals cannot imagine the future. God gave you, as a human being, made in His image, the ability to see the past. That's called the memory. To live purposely in your present, that's called intentionality. And to visualize or imagine the preferred future, well, that's called dreaming. You've got to have a dream. Carl Sandburg, a renowned poet and journalist, says nothing happens unless first we dream. So you need a dream for your life. It is the greatest gift that God has given you. We are most like our Creator when we are creative. When it comes to creating things, the first creation is within your mind. The second creation happens when you share it with someone, and the third creation occurs as we work towards it. But it all starts with that first creation, the dream. Everything you see, every piece of art, every business, every building, every product, every church, everything happens because somebody first dreamed about it. Everything begins as a dream. It's Napoleon who said, imagination rules the world. And it was Einstein who said, imagination is more important than knowledge. It's that ability to imagine and dream that makes us creators in the image of God. At the Bridge, we encourage dreaming. We encourage the what if. We encourage the can you imagine. We believe that God wills for us to see and to believe for more, for better, for God. Many have run into limits in the fulfillment of their dreams and have just settled. Some succumb to fear and give up the faith regarding their dreams. Every dream and every dreamer will face limits, or figurative giants, if I might say. That will keep you from the fulfillment of your God-given dreams and opportunities. These limits come in the form of circumstances that are problematic. They can be financial problems. They can be emotional problems. They can be relational problems. They can be problems with your health. What do you do when you face these complex problems or giants in your life? How do you face the giants in your work or even at home? Now, fortunately, we have a wonderful story in the Bible that shows us how to deal with the giants in our life. It's called the story of David and Goliath. We find this story in 1 Samuel chapter 17. Setting this up is Malcolm Gladwell, who's written a number of New York Times best-selling books, and he has a book out called Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. What a great summer read it is. He addresses the story of David and Goliath. He says in his book, this story is one of the most famous in the Bible, this duel between David and Goliath. It's a story that has enormous interest to me. It was the story that inspired my latest book. I thought a lot about it, he says, and it fascinates me because it's the story with all kinds of unexpected depth and complexity. So many of you know the basic outline of the story, which is there's a duel 3,000 years ago in Palestine. Now, that's probably the best place to start in the story because it's important to understand a little bit about the geography of the ancient Palestine to put this story into context. Palestine, in fact, Israel, even today, has a mountain range that runs down its eastern border. In the mountains are all the traditional, most famous cities of Israel: Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Hebron. The western half of the country is a flat coastal plain that borders on the Mediterranean. That's where Tel Aviv is today. In between the plain and the mountain, there's an area called Shifla. The Shifla is a series of valleys and ridges that run east to west and connect the plain with the mountains. If you've ever been to Israel, you'll know that it is just about the most beautiful part of the country. It's incredibly gorgeous. These are the valleys filled with oak trees and vineyards and with wheat fields. It is also, though, the most strategically crucial point of the country because the valleys are the means by which people living in the plains can advance on into the mountains. So time and again, over the course of the history, battles have been fought for control of Israel in the Shifla. That's exactly what happened 3,000 years ago with the Philistines and the Israelites. The Philistines are the historic enemies of the kingdom of Israel. They are a people who occupied the plains that we've just spoke of. They came from Crete. They're a seafaring people, and they were living in and around what is now called Tel Aviv. They decided that they wanted to go and conquer the kingdom of Israel, which is clustered in the mountains. So they started to climb up through one of those valleys. And King Saul, who was the king of Israel at that moment, catches wind of what the Philistines are doing, and he brings his army down from the mountains to meet the Philistines. The two sides meet in the area of Shifla called the Valley of Elah. The Israelites dig in along the northern ridge, and the Philistines dig in along the southern ridge. The two armies are there just staring at each other. They just look at each other. It's a standoff. Neither can attack the other because to attack, you must come down the ridge onto the valley floor, then up on the other side. And as you're doing that, you expose yourself to your enemy. So it's a deadlock. And they sit there for weeks just looking at each other. Finally, the Philistines have had enough. They send a mighty warrior, a giant, down onto the valley floor, and he challenges the Israelites to send a mighty warrior of their own, and they'll duke it out. They will settle the conflict in a one-on-one combat. Now, this was a tradition in ancient times. It was done all the time. It was called single combat. 2 warriors, one from each side, would fight on behalf of their enemies. Each side would accept the outcome. So this giant standing there in the middle of the valley floor is basically saying, come on, who's going to take me on? And no one of the Israelite side has the guts to enter the floor and take him on. He's too big, he's ferocious, he's outfitted top to bottom in all kinds of, well, you heard the account of the incredible armor he had. He's 7 feet tall, or maybe even more than that. He's really a terrifying figure. Nobody will take him on, except for this kid who comes up to King Saul and he says, I'll do it. Saul looks at him and he says, you're insane, you're just a child. You can't take on a 7-foot warrior. And the kid says, actually, I'm not a kid, I'm a shepherd. I've done some time out there in the fields and I've killed some lions in my day. I'm not pathetic, you know. But Saul's like, you're not going. And the kid says, well, I really want to do it. And Saul realizes he doesn't have a choice because no one else is volunteering. This is all he has, is this shepherd boy. He tries to give the kid his armor. Take this so at least you've got some preparation for going up against this giant. The kid says, no, I'm not going to do it. Instead, what he does is he reaches down and he picks up a couple of stones from the ground. He puts them in his pouch and he marches down the side of the hill with his shepherd's staff and this little bag of rocks. Goliath the giant looks at him and he says to him, come to me so I might feed your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Like, come on, I'm going to chew you up. The boy gets closer and the giant sees that he does not have a sword or a shield. All he has is a little shepherd's staff and this little bag. The giant is insulted. He's the biggest warrior in all of ancient Palestine, and here they send this kid to fight him. He says, am I a dog that you should come to me with sticks? The kid, David, gets even closer and he says, no, I come to you in the name of the Lord God Almighty. He reaches into his bag, takes out one of those stones, he puts it into his sling, and he whirls it round and round, and the rock goes forward, hits that giant right between the eyes, and the giant falls over dead. The boy runs up to him, grabs his sword, and chops off his head. And Israel wins the day, and the Philistines turn around and they go running all the way back to the coastal plain. Now, Malcolm Gladwell concludes by saying, that is the story of David and Goliath. The kid is David, and the giant is Goliath. And we've all heard that story before. And the reason I got so interested in it was that when I was writing my book, I looked at the story more, and I realized that many of us have fundamentally misinterpreted what its meaning and its lessons are. God means for us to learn much from this story. So here's some lessons from David facing Goliath. We use that story as a kind of metaphor for stories about improbable victories. The overwhelming favorite goes up against the 1 in a million long shot, and the 1 in a million long shot wins the day. Why do we call David a 1 in a million long shot? One reason is that he's a kid. He's a shepherd. He's up against an experienced warrior. The second reason is because he's of normal size, probably my size. You may not know this, but both of my sons are very big men. David, my oldest son, is 6'4", and he is built like an offensive lineman. He comes in around 290. Jeremy, the younger son, stands just under 6'8". He is super fit. He's ripped. I had the opportunity to be with both of my sons on Father's Day this year, and in their presence, I found myself feeling really, really small. I don't often feel this way, but with them, I do. Now imagine David, the shepherd boy. He's up against a guy who is 7 feet at least, right? But the biggest reason we think of David as being this improbable long shot is that Goliath is decked out in head-to-toe armor and has got every weapon known to ancient warriors in his hands. All David has is a sling. Now, that's a good place to start regarding these lessons. I think that's where we go wrong. Let's start with that phrase, all David has is a sling. In David's day, slingers were trained artillery who used a sling. A sling was a leather pouch which had 2 long ropes attached to it. You put a rock in the middle of the pouch, and you would whirl it around like this, and then you would let one of the ropes go, and so the rock would be propelled forward. Very often, when we talk and people tell the story of David and Goliath, they make it sound like David had a slingshot, you know? Like it's some kind of a child's toy. Slingshots are not deadly weapons. They can injure. David did not have a slingshot. He had a sling, and a sling is a very, very different and far more lethal weapon. Believe it or not, we have people who have studied slings, and there are, as is the case of most interesting things in the world, a group of sling nerds out there who have done all the calculations. We know that an experienced slinger would rotate that sling 6 or 7 times a second, which means if you do the math, that rock would be traveling at 35 meters per second. So if Goliath is 100 feet from David, the rock will reach Goliath in less than a second. Goliath barely knows what's happening, and boom, it's hitting him in the middle of his head. The second interesting thing is that the rock that David used was probably what's called barium sulfate, which is common in the Valley of Elah. It's a very heavy, dense rock. And if we do the math on the ballistics of that rock had a stopping power of equal to the bullet of a .45 caliber handgun. This is a serious weapon that David's using. What about accuracy? Well, we know from other discussions of slingers in the Bible and also from discussions of medieval warfare that experienced slingers, and David was an experienced slinger, were incredibly accurate. They could hit birds in flight with their sling. There's no question that what David has is a weapon that is entirely capable of taking out Goliath. In fact, in ancient warfare, slingers were routinely used to match up against heavy infantry. That's what you ruled out when you were faced with a bunch of people who were dressed head to toe in armor with swords and shields. So there's Goliath. He's heavy infantry. What he expected was a battle with another heavy infantry man. That's when he says, "Come to me that I might feed your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." The key phrase is, "Come to me," meaning come right here, because we're going to have hand-to-hand combat. But David's not an idiot here. He's not going to go into hand-to-hand combat with a guy who's twice his size. He's going to use the weapon that he spent his entire life being trained to use, the sling. So here we have a guy who has changed the rules of combat without telling his opponent, has superior technology, and is filled with the Spirit of the Lord. Yet we insist on calling David the underdog. Why? Isn't he the favorite? He's got superior technology, and he's changed the rules without telling his opponent, and he has God in his heart. Doesn't that make him the favorite? Now, the second interesting thing about the story, it's not just the case that we seem to have radically underestimated David's power and ability, it's also that we've misunderstood Goliath himself. Goliath was supposed to be this mighty warrior, right? But the truth of it is, as you read 1 Samuel chapter 17 about this battle between David and Goliath, there are all kinds of things, like details, that are completely inconsistent with the idea of Goliath as this indomitable warrior. The first is that he is led onto the valley floor by an attendant. Someone brings him down to the point where the fight is supposed to take place. Well, that doesn't really make sense. If he's the greatest warrior in all of Palestine, why is he being led by the hand like a preschooler crossing the street? The second thing is that in the story, the biblical account stresses how slowly Goliath moves. Why is that great, fearsome, ferocious warrior moving so slowly? Then there's the fact that it takes Goliath an awful long time to figure out what's going on. David comes down from the hill. He's got a staff and a little bag of rocks, and he's wearing his shepherd's outfit. It's clear from the outset, this kid has no intention of fighting a sword fight. What does Goliath do? He stands there and he says, "Come to me, that I may feed your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field." He's not getting it. Why is he not getting it? Well, then there's the strange thing that he says to David, and as he draws close and he sees that he's carrying a staff. He says, "Am I a dog that you would come to me with sticks?" David doesn't have sticks. David has a stick. Why does Goliath see 2 sticks or more when there's only one? The answer to these puzzles has been provided by a whole group of, again, believe it or not, endocrinologists who have gotten really interested, like medical experts have gotten really interested in this person called Goliath. They've pointed out that there is a plausible explanation for a lot of the anomalies that we experience in the story. It begins with Goliath's size. Goliath is huge, head and shoulders above anyone else in his day. Whenever we are confronted with people who are that big, that unusually tall, we usually look for some sort of physiological explanation. The most common cause of giantism, this is what it's called, is a condition called acromegaly. I'm trying really hard on that word. And acromegaly is caused by a tumor on your pituitary gland that causes the overproduction of human growth hormone. Most of the great giants in human history had acromegaly. One of the more famous WWF wrestlers is a Canadian named Andre the Giant, a famous Canadian wrestler. He had acromegaly. The tallest man of all times, Robert Wadlow, 8'11", he had acromegaly. There's a good chance that Goliath had acromegaly. What's interesting about this is there's a very common side effect of acromegaly. That is that the tumor can sometimes grow so large that it starts to compress on your optic nerves, the nerves that feed your eyes from your brain, with the result that many people who have acromegaly have severely restricted vision. They have real problems with eyesight. Think of that in the context of all these anomalies in the story of David and Goliath. Here's a man who moves slowly. Why? Because he's scared of tripping on a rock that he can't even see. Here's a guy who has to be led to the valley floor by an attendant. Why? Because he can't make his own way there. Here's a guy who it takes forever to figure out that David is not, in fact, intending to fight him with a sword. Why? Because he can't see David. When he says, "Come to me, that I might feed your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field," the key phrase is, "come to me," because he needs David to be right here, because otherwise he cannot see him. Then, when he says, "Am I a dog that you should come to me with sticks?" why is he seeing multiple sticks? Because he has at least double vision. What the Israelites saw from high up on the hills was someone who appeared to be this mighty warrior, but in fact, the very thing that gave the giant his size was the common or the cause of his greatest weakness. That is the first lesson of the story of David and Goliath. Giants are not what they seem. The kinds of obstacles we face in our life are not nearly as insurmountable and depressing and overwhelming as they appear to be at first blush. Look closely and you'll see a different truth. Giants can be slain, particularly by those who have the Spirit of the Lord in their hearts. It's unlikely that you're ever going to have to face a physical giant like David did. But it is highly likely that you're going to have to face a whole lot of other common giants. Giants like financial problems or relational difficulties or marriage conflict or work. Problems that keep you from going after your dream. In this story in 1 Samuel 17, David actually had to fight 4 other giants before he gets to Goliath. They weren't physical giants, but they were giants in his mind. You are far more likely to have to face these kinds of giants than someone like Goliath. But they can be just as big and just as intimidating, and they can become just as limiting for you and I. They can keep us from becoming who God wants us to be in terms of fulfilling the dreams that he gives us to fulfill. Let me give you a little background. The chapter before this chapter in the Bible, chapter 16 of 1 Samuel, in chapter 16 of 1 Samuel, there's a man named Samuel. And this book, of course, is called 1 Samuel because it's named after the chief religious leader of the day. Samuel was the prophet of Israel. In 1 Samuel 16, God says to Samuel, I want you to go to the town of Bethlehem, and I want you to find a guy named Jesse. You're going to anoint Jesse's son as the next king of Israel. You see, the existing king was still very much alive. His name was Saul. But God had already decided that Saul's days were numbered. So this was a secret plan. God's telling Samuel, you're going to go anoint the next king of Israel. So Samuel goes to Jerusalem, and he finds this guy named Jesse, and he says, do you have a son? Jesse says, not only do I have a son, I've got 8. So Samuel goes, well, I have to look at them all. So Jesse brings his 7 oldest sons to parade them before the prophet to see which one is going to become the king of Israel. He shows him the oldest son, and Samuel goes, not the guy. Next, he shows him the second oldest. It's not the guy. Next, he shows him the 3rd oldest son. Not the guy. Next. None of the guys are the guy. Samuel goes, well, do you have any other kids? And Jesse goes, oh yeah, there is one more, the youngest or the runt of the litter, David. He's a pipsqueak. I don't want to bring him in. It'd be embarrassing. Well, he's out tending sheep. And Samuel said, bring him in. So he brings him in, this youngest son. Samuel takes one look at him and he says, that's the guy. And he anoints him to be the king of Israel. So you know what happens after this? Nothing. Nothing happens. Life goes back to normal. Jesse says to his youngest, David, now get back out there and start tending sheep. Nothing at all changes in David's life. He has been given the dream. He's been told, you're the next king of Israel, but get back out there and tend the sheep. So here's the other giants that David had to face. There is actually quite a long delay between when David is anointed as king and when he actually sees the fulfillment of the dream years later. There's a big delay. And I would say that this is exactly what happens in yours and my life. We experience delays. The first giant in facing your dream is delay. No dream is fulfilled instantly. God gives you the dream on one day, but doesn't fulfill it until days, if not months, if not years later. It's years later that you see the fulfillment of David's dream. There is always a time delay. There is always a time lapse. There is always a waiting period. In David's case, his dad holds him back from the dream. In David's case, his dad held him back and said, David, you need to get back out there and start tending sheep. He didn't think David was old enough or experienced enough to be the king of Israel. In verse 12 through 15, it says, now David was the youngest of Jesse's 8 sons. His 3 older brothers enlisted in Saul's army, but David was held back to care for the sheep in Bethlehem. The first barrier of your dream is this. There are going to be people who hold you back. There are going to be people in your life who hold you back from the dream that God has given you. Before coming to the Bridge, I was pastoring in a couple of very large churches, and in both churches, the lead pastor resigned during my tenure there. In both churches, I applied for the position of lead pastor, and in both churches, by God's grace, I was used by him to grow these churches through the ministries that I was responsible for. I had a track record of significant growth. But I was turned down in both of those churches because what they looked at was my age, and they said, you're too young. Now, I have to tell you that I was stunned. Why? Because I demonstrated the skill and the ability to grow a church and impact a community. I had a huge belief in God, and my God has no limits, and my God can do anything. He has no limits as to what it is that he can do, and I believe that he could do great things even through me. Now, some of you know what I'm talking about. You've been held back from what you want to do with your life because of your age. Some of you have been held back from what you want to do with your life and the dream that God has given you because of your race. Some of you have been held back because of your gender. Some of you have been held back because you weren't pretty enough or handsome enough or smart enough or whatever enough. Discrimination in any form is a barrier that you must break through. There will be people who want to hold you back. There is a second barrier that you will face in finding and fulfilling your dream. It is discouragement. You will face discouragement because everybody around you is scared to death. Nobody thinks you can do it. Nobody has hope. Nobody believes that you can take down this giant. And they're all scared to death, and they're all convincing each other that it's impossible to make a difference. Goliath had created a climate of fear in Israel, and everybody had concluded we're going to lose the battle, and nobody can beat this giant Goliath. In verses 8 through 10, it says, each day Goliath would stand and shout at the ranks of Israel's army, "Why do you come out here and line up for battle? Choose one man to fight me. If he's able to kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I kill him, you'll become our subjects and you will serve us." Day after day, Goliath taunted them. He created a climate of fear. Have you ever been in a situation where everybody around you thought this was hopeless, where there was this climate of fear? It's like hope just sort of came out of your lungs. Maybe you've been at work, in your office, and they say, in this economy, nobody can grow anything. We can't solve this problem. It's going down the tubes. And everybody around you is saying, it can't be done. It can't be done. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. They're all discouraged, and they're convincing each other because they're all filled with fear. And they say there's nothing that we can do about this complex problem. But let me tell you something. Conventional wisdom is often wrong wisdom. Everybody there was wrong. It says twice in the passage, Goliath challenged the ranks of Israel's army. Sometimes the solution has to come from outside the rank and file. What you need is a little kid from the village coming up and saying, "Hey, we can do this." What you need is a fresh set of eyes, because the professionals or the experienced ones can often be wrong. The crowd, in this case, was wrong. Just because everybody says something doesn't make it so. So somebody had to challenge the status quo. You see, everybody was listening to the wrong voice. They were listening to this guy every single day. It says for 40 days, twice a day, morning and evening, the Philistine giant loudly berated the Israelite army. It's no wonder they got discouraged, right? They're listening to this guy day after day. So here's my question. Who are you listening to? Who is it that is in your life that is saying it can't be done? Who's poo-pooing your dream, putting down your dream, saying it won't ever happen? Forget it. Who's telling you that you're not the person to do it? If you listen to the negative people or the negative social circles or the negative social media, you will get negative. In verses 23 and 24 of the text, it says, as David talked with his brothers on the front line, he saw Goliath start shouting his usual threats to Israel's army. When the army heard Goliath, they all ran away in terror. Now, the first barrier to your dream is delay. Somebody's trying to hold you back, but the second barrier to your dream is discouragement. And because everybody around you is telling you that life sucks and it can't be done, they're wrong. So let's go now to the third thing that will hold you back from the fulfillment of your dream. It's disapproval. This dream buster, and some call it the giant of disapproval, David had to handle this one. He had to be willing to face the disapproval of people around him to go after this dream. And you and I will have to do the same. But here's the problem. The reason why most people don't go after their dream is they're afraid of disapproval. They are afraid of rejection. In this case, David's own brother questions his motives. David's own brother questions his motives and disapproved of David going after the giant. We, of course, want everyone to like us. We really do. We want everyone to approve of everything we do. But if you go after God's dream for your life, I'm guaranteeing you this: there will be naysayers, there will be critics, and there will be misunderstanding, and there will be attacks, and there will be people who are judging you for what you do because they don't get it and they don't get you. And this is the disapproval giant. In this case, David's own brother questions David's motivation. He treats his younger brother with disdain and disgust, and he demeans him, and he disregards him, and he belittles him. In verse 28 and 29, notice the conversation between the older brother and the younger brother. Listen to this conversation and see if you can identify with it. The older brother says, "Why are you even here? Why aren't you taking care of the scrawny little flock of sheep? You cocky little brat. I know how conceited you are." And David, the younger brother, just says, "Now what have I done? Can't I even ask a question?" Do any of you vaguely relate to this conversation? We all know what sibling rivalry is. We all know what it is to be a part of any community where those within our community aren't cheering for us. Somehow secretly, because of their own insecurities, they're cheering against us. It happens to all of us. Did you know that even Jesus had to deal with this? Jesus was born of a virgin, and Mary and Joseph hadn't had sex. And because God was the father of Jesus. But the Bible tells us very clearly that after Jesus was born, Joseph and Mary had many kids. We're given their names in the Bible. In fact, Mary and the kids followed Jesus during his ministry. What's interesting is none of Jesus' half-brothers or sisters accepted him as Lord and Savior until after his resurrection. They all became believers after the fact. Similarly, those closest to David were asking the wrong question. They were asking David, "Who do you think you are?" The question is not who do we think we are. The question is, who do we think God is? You let the size of your God determine the size of your goal or your dream. If you have a big God, you better have some big goals, because God doesn't give us piddly little dreams. If the dream is from God, you are going to face some conflict, but God is with you. And it's a dream that was authored by God himself. So go with it. You have to decide what matters more to you, the approval of other people or the approval of God. I decided a long time ago that the approval of God is more important to me than the approval of other people. It's not my job, it's none of my business actually, what you think of me. It is my business what God thinks of me. That's the issue of disappointment. There's one other dream buster, and I'm going to close with this, and it's doubt. First there's delay, then there's discouragement, then there's disapproval, and then there's doubt. Am I capable of this? Am I up to the task? Can I actually do what God is asking me to do? And then there are the people all around you who will tell you you can't. In David's case, the expert doubted his ability. There was nobody who was a greater expert on war than King Saul. And because Saul had been in battle his entire life, he thought that David could not get the job done. So David goes to see King Saul, and here's the conversation in verses 32 and 33. "Don't worry about a thing," David tells Saul. "I'll fight this Philistine." Now, let's just stop there for a minute. Confidence in God is often misinterpreted as cockiness by other people. A lot of people might think a person is cocky when they're actually just a person of faith and confident in God. It's not that they think they can do it, it's that they know God can do it in and through them. That's confidence in God, not cockiness. And David says, "Don't worry about a thing, King. I'll fight this Philistine." So my friends, how do you defeat the giants that are keeping you from being the man or woman of God that he wants you to be? How do you defeat these fears that are keeping you from being that person who sees a dream fulfilled? So what it is that we do is we do the very things that David did. The 4 things that David did to defeat these giants are these. Number 1, remember how God has helped you in the past. Number 2, I use the tools that God has given me now. Number 3, ignore the dream busters. And number 4, expect to win the battle with God's help. It is his reputation. It is for his glory. And it's for the welfare of all those who are around you that you see the dream fulfilled. Expect God to help you. He's willing to, he's wanting to. He's created you to fulfill the very dreams that he's placed in your heart. I love what David says to Goliath as he runs onto the battlefield. David runs on and he's shouting this. He says, "You come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord Almighty." Today, the Lord will conquer you, not me, the Lord, and the whole world will know that there is a God. Listen, your dreams fulfilled brings glory to God. Lean heavily upon him in the midst of any type of delays or discouragements, in any situation that sort of creates a complexity where you want to give up. Maybe you see it as a limit, but maybe it's an opportunity to do something even greater than what you had anticipated. So I just want to encourage you, even through this story here today, is to fulfill the dreams that God has given you, but do so with a trust in God Almighty to do it in and through you. Let me pray. Father, in Jesus' name, I thank you so much for Malcolm Gladwell, and I thank you so much for Samuel the prophet, and I thank you so much for David and this entire story. I'm just so grateful, God, that you can teach us so much, and we can be encouraged to get beyond what limits us, and we can see these dreams and aspirations that we have come to fulfillment. Be with us going forward, I pray. In God's name we pray. Amen.
I've carried a burden for too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go. I see it now, laying it down, and I know that I need you. Run to the Father, fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, and I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, 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 oh. You saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your son for redemption, the price for my heart. I don't have a context for that kind of love. I don't understand, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, and I'll run to the Father again and again. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. A heart needs a surgeon, a soul needs a friend, and I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, your sight. Long before my first breath, running into your arms is running to life from death. I feel this rush deep in my chest. Your mercy is calling out. Just as I am, you pull me in, and I know I need you now. I'll run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart found a surgeon, my soul found a friend, and I'll run to the Father again and again. I'll run to the Father, fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart found a surgeon, my soul found a friend. I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again.
Thanks so much for joining us today. It was so good to be with you. For any of the information that we talked about or to find out what's happening at the Bridge, you can head to bridgeconnect.ca. Well, we'll see you next week. Have a great week. Thank you.